360 is a futuristic racing game that was released for the PlayStation in 1999 and was developed by Smart Dog and published by Cryo Interactive. The game itself is set in a submerged futuristic style world beneath the water, where players utilise the use of hover ships for racing purposes, but also while using lethal style weapons to take out and eliminate opponents. The player can select between 8 different types of hover ships, all with their own attributes and abilities and weapon types that can differ depending on each player's unique style and can definitely give you an advantage or disadvantage depending on which you use. So primarily the goal of the game is to compete in tournaments and to win races outright, but also to try and eliminate the opponents within each race. Now, the game comprises of a multitude of different game modes with time trial. There's also 2-player split screen mode where you can race in tournaments and also have like deathmatch arena style events where you have to destroy all of the other opponents. And when you play in the single player tournament modes, you will have a mix of the two. You'll find that you'll spend the majority of your time in races where you have to try and win and defeat opponents. But in saying that, when you defeat opponents, you can respawn after a certain amount of hits. So your goal is really to finish in first place, but then later on, once you've completed a select number of races, you will be entered into an arena style environment where your goal is to eliminate as many enemies as possible. Now, the only main downside of that, even from my own personal experience of playing the game, you can get through races and there is some cases you can win the odd race here and there, but I found that there's a massive imbalance with the computer AI, as one minute it can be simple, but then at the same time it can also be super aggressive to a point that whoever's in first place, once they get ahead of you, you will not catch them. You will not even get anywhere near them. There's always something that happens, or someone else will take you out from behind before you can gain access or even get close to whoever's in the first place, especially in later races in the tournaments. And coupled with that, when you do go into the arena style environment, there is a known number of glitches in the game where, while as it's not apparent that you have to defeat a select number of enemies within these environment style arenas, instead you're moving around and you're defeating opponents, but there doesn't seem to be any end to it. I found from myself playing it that while in the arena, you could be there for an hour just constantly defeating opponents and nothing happens, nothing changes. The game doesn't finish up, the timer doesn't finish up, it doesn't move on to another stage, so you can literally be stuck on that game itself or that one type of track. And those type of annoying glitches is easy to see why the game got really poor reviews in magazines, many of them stating that the game is a mess and it's considered to be one of the worst racing games on the PlayStation, if not of all time. There's just so many things that while it does have some decent ideas, it's just not executed well enough for it to be worthwhile playing. In many cases, people that have bought this game or have played it, or if you're a collector, the only reason why you would gain access is just to add it to your collection. But in most cases, a lot of people wouldn't play it. Now, it does have some decent features for what it does have, but it's just, if you compare it to other games that were similar to it, it just pales in comparison. It's not as executed as good as it could have been. The computer AI is super aggressive and in some cases just absolutely ridiculous, that in many cases makes the game unplayable, especially for a casual player. But even if you have put time into it, yes, you will be able to gain some progression in the likes of the tournaments, but there's a very good chance that when you reach the arena environments, there's no indication as to what you're supposed to do, how many enemies you're supposed to defeat, whether you have a timer. There's nothing really, so you're left just wandering around, and even when you defeat enemies or you've completed objectives, nothing really happens, nothing ever changes, so it's hard to know if you can even complete the game or not in most cases. So it's understandable why the game got very poor reviews in the magazines. And considering this game came out in 1999, midway through the PlayStation's life cycle, you would expect games to be of a unique standard or a caliber that is worthwhile, but the reality is that isn't always the case. Even when you look at modern games today, you see games on the likes of the PlayStation Store, you see the games that are being released on Steam and many other games. There's a lot of mediocre and just terrible games being just thrown out there. Even more to the point what you call like shovelware games, where they're just thrown out just to make a quick buck. And to be honest, that was happening back then, even during the 90s and early 2000s, with many games seen on the PS1 and PS2 as well. Because it was the highlight console, everybody wanted a piece of it, but a lot of people just developers just wanted to make a quick buck out of something as well. So it's a pity, like, when you think about it, for such an iconic console. But then there always has to be a balance with these type of things. For everything good, there's always going to be something mediocre or bad at the other end as well. So unfortunately this game just happens to be on the bottom end of that category. It does take many ideas seen from other iconic games, but it's just not as well put together as it could have been. But it is what it is. It is worth a try. There are people that do play it, and whether or not people enjoy it, well, that's down to the individual themselves. Not everybody's going to like this type of game. Like, there's certain features like the people will like, but there's things that most won't like about it. But it really just depends on your own preferences. But regardless, I'll leave that up to you. You make up your own choices and experiences on the games that you play and whether you like them or not. Like, I genuinely don't like to talk ill about games, but I know myself if there's certain features of a game that I don't like, and especially if a game that's not executed correctly, that there's just elements of it that leave it that you can't really even finish the game. That for me leaves a lot of questions. And this game does present a lot of that, unfortunately. But regardless, I would love to know your thoughts and opinions of 360 for the PlayStation if you have played this game yourself, and what do you think of this game overall. So be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other very obscure, unique and somewhat quirky games that are like this, that were also released on the PS1, then you can check out the playlist on screen to see more of those games in action, as I will be covering a lot more of them in the future. Yes, even the bad ones as well. But again, it's an experience. And if you are interested in seeing more of these videos, then be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep updated with future content. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.